My name is Josefa Skenderovic. I'm a retired professor of physics and chemistry. Besides working with children, one of my favorite pastimes is working with straw. It's something that we have a lot of here. And so we have a long tradition of creating items of straw. This crown, it's a symbol which we'll carry as a Thanksgiving gift at this year's Dušijanica celebration in Subotitsa Cathedral. A young man and woman who have been especially chosen will carry it. They are called the Bandash and Bandashitsa. At the top is a cross, a symbol of the family, and the Eucharistic thanksgiving to God is at the center of the crown. This symbolizes how it's cherished in the hearts of all who throughout these 100 years loved and lived for this Dušijanica.
In the north of the Republic of Serbia, in a part of the Autonomous Province of Vojvodina, just 10 kilometers from the Hungarian border, lies Subotitsa. Every year in mid-August, this town of 100,000 inhabitants celebrates the end of the harvest, or as the locals call it, Dušijanica. It begins with a formal evening prayer in the cathedral dedicated to Saint Teresa of Avila. Among the multitude of the faithful are this year's Bandash and Bandashitsa, Petar Gakovic and Đurđa Sudarević.
It's a great honor to be the Bandash on the 100th anniversary. Any Bandash over the past 100 years would have said the same. When you consider how this tradition has been going on over the years, that grants it a special satisfaction and merits even greater thanksgiving to God.
I was especially joyful because it's a great honor to be the Bandashitsa. I took part in the folklore of the Dušijanica before, and I remember how we awaited the Bandash and Bandashitsa. It was really super. I never thought that I'd be chosen as Bandashitsa, so I was really surprised.
Dušijanica is an ancient custom during which Croat families celebrate a successful and plentiful harvest. When the Bandash, or chief harvester, announces to the landlord that the harvest is complete and reports on the number of haystacks, then prayers of gratitude are said, followed by a formal lunch and festivities. In 1911, the parish priest of St. Rocco invited parishioners to offer up thanksgiving in the church, and this is how Dušijanica, an intensely family celebration, was founded. The Croats have national minority status in Serbia. Most of them live in and around Subotitsa, which is also the seat of the diocese of the same name. Although Croats only number about 60,000, their faith is so alive that they're considered the backbone of the Catholic community. They consider the Dushanica an important part of their religious and cultural identity.
I think it's a mixture of religious and traditional culture. It's the focal celebration for us Croats. With great pride, we proclaim it our most beautiful tradition.
The most important part of the Dushanica celebration takes place early in the morning. Petar, the bandash, will set off in a decorated horse-drawn coach to Giurgia's house, and together they will bring the crown to be blessed.
Hvala Isusi Marija. Evo, je li imao nekakve bandašice?
Ako se daš napraviš.
Ste novinec.
Je li sad ne poznaš što motani su ti konci, sve.
The custom is that the bandash and bandashica bring the crown to the church of St. Rocco in the village of Ker to be blessed. Here they meet up with the bandash and the bandashica from the villages of Bemuk, Tavakut, Malaj Bosna, Gujim, Shednik and Sombor. The parish priest of Ker, Father Andrija Aništic, thanks God for this year's harvest. He blesses the crown, and this starts the festivity. Before leaving for Subotitsa Cathedral, the little queens, or the Leila, as they are known, bid farewell to the bandash and bandashica, singing out praises and thanksgiving for the bounteous harvest. The communists were unremitting in their fight to eradicate the religious character of the Dushanica, to turn it into an ordinary village party, a tradition that has been upheld for over a century despite the adversities.
After the Second World War, anything that was rooted in religion was undesirable here. Even crowns were frowned upon, because it recalls monarchy and the greed of capitalism. So the priests encouraged the local women to make religious symbols out of straw.
Neki religijski simbol od slame.
The Dushanica was revered by local farmers who remained faithful to Christ despite the pressures exerted by the communists. Pavao and Ivankovitch follow the path set by their forefathers with an unshaken belief that their handiwork will be blessed by God.
The Dushanica is a feast of thanksgiving to God for all his blessings. We who work in the fields, grow wheat and grains, know very well how hard it is to plant and wait until harvest and then sell it. That's why we are full of gratitude.
Our work is in a factory under the skies. I think it is a direct cooperation with the Lord, because he has to bless it and give us the strength to work. If I wake up early in the morning, I take time, maybe half an hour, to thank God for this new day, to hand over all my problems to him, and to ask him for strength. I think I put God in the first place, and that's why I'm able to take everything that life sends me.
The history of this region is a turbulent one, interwoven with wars, periods of destruction and rebirth. The first mention of the diocese of Subotitsa can be found in documents over 1,000 years old. The very fact that Saint Methodius himself settled in the city of Bach for a while testifies to this region's rich and indisputable Christian roots. This Christian link, however, was broken with the Ottoman invasion. After joining the Christian forces at Bach, all 7 bishops lost their lives to Turkish spears at the Battle of Mohacs. The parish priest at Subotitsa Cathedral, Monsignor Stjepan Beretic, sees this as a turning point in the history of the Subotitsa diocese.
There were dozens of seminaries and convents in this area. Education flourished here. Girls and boys were sent to school. Up until the arrival of the Turks, this was an extremely well-developed area culturally. In 1526, when the Turks were returning from the Battle of Mohacs, they came back over our side of the Danube River and everything was burned to the ground.
200 years later, at the beginning of the 18th century, the Empress Maria Theresa drove out the Turks and established state administration in the area known today as Vojvodina. This abandoned land was settled by her subjects, mostly Germans. In the 20th century, Vojvodina was one of the most developed areas of southeastern Europe. There was a positive multicultural atmosphere. Everyone was respected and all benefited from good neighborly relations. Serbs, Hungarians, Croats and Germans, Catholics, Orthodox and Protestants alike. The Second World War fundamentally altered this status quo.
After the Second World War, the German factions were driven out from here. Concentration camps were organized for the Germans that remained after the Second World War. Over 62,000 Germans were either killed or died of starvation. In the 1950s, those who survived the camps were free to return to Germany. Once again, we were handicapped by the loss of priests and a huge part of the Catholic population. The diocese was left with so many abandoned parish halls and churches. It was a very difficult time.
The the faithful of the diocese of Subotitsa abandoned themselves to divine providence and had constant recourse to the Mother of God when everything seemed lost. During the last operation of the Second World War, using the Danube as a natural defense shield, the Germans raised a stronghold on the right bank of the Danube at Batina to stop the advance of partisan and Soviet forces further west. In that final dangerous confrontation of the two armies, the Catholic village of Bački Monoštor found itself completely surrounded. Maria Turkaje remembers her parents' recollections.
On the 13th of October 1944, anyone who was able-bodied had to leave the village, because we were told it was going to be razed to the ground. The only ones left were the old, the sick, some little children and the parish priest. He called everyone into the church to vow before the Virgin of Fatima, our Blessed Mother, if the town of Bački Monostir is saved from ruin, we will celebrate a Mass in your honor every year on this day at midday. All night long in the dark church, the parish priest prayed with the infirm and the elderly. The planes hovered over the village, but only one bomb went off, and it was at the very edge of the village. The next day the sun arose, and the village was intact. From that day up until today, 66 years, Bački Monostir celebrates Our Lady of Fatima. The faithful gathered in the church exactly at midday. When I was 10, they dressed me up in the national costume, and I had to make a recitation to Our Lady of Fatima. The vow obliges me. I am responsible for passing down the importance of this vow to my children, and to never forget.
The faithful of this community, both Hungarian and Croat, went through a difficult time at the end of the last century. In 1991, Slobadan Milosevi, in an effort to prevent the inevitable dissolution of Yugoslavia, attacked the Republic of Croatia. In Vojvodina, the Croats and Hungarians were vigorously mobilized and sent into the war zone of Vukovar.
The first problem was the unbelievable fear that the people from here lived in. Some feared conscription and compulsion to go to war. Others were more afraid of the refugees who came here from Bosnia and Croatia, because they had been promised lands and property. They were told that the locals would be driven out, or they would leave of their own will, and they could take their property. Then the newcomers attacked the locals, because they hadn't left yet.
Not even now, 20 years later, is it easy for Anna and Nestor Gabric to talk about that time.
I was really afraid, especially when they were hunting out my husband to send him to the wars in Croatia, in Bosnia and in Kosovo. It was really hard for me. They dragged him off, right when I was due to give birth to my son. That was the worst. I really thought I would never see him again. I just took refuge with the Mother of God. I prayed together with my older daughters. And a miracle happened. He returned. I said, "Thank you, God. Really, there is no one greater than you."
I prayed to Our Lady because I knew no one else could help me. I was arrested. And she helped me because I was released for a while. After that, I was constantly hiding. There was a type of warfare here too, because you had to be careful of every word you said. Be careful about the way you looked at someone. You had to protect yourself from that war craziness, otherwise you'd find yourself on the front line. Unfortunately, many of us were forced and went, and some never returned. There were also ugly provocations, like explosives planted at the cathedral entrance, even broke the covered stained glass window. All the windows and the church door were also totally destroyed. Death to the Hungarians was written on the wall, above where the explosives were laid. On the bishop's palace wall there was a slogan written against the Croats. It was a time of fear, a time of insecurity.
After all the hardship, especially after the last war suffered by the people of former Yugoslavia, the diocese of Subotitsa awaits the Dusjanica, significantly weakened. Church statistics show that in this area, over 30,000 faithful have been forced to leave since the early 1990s. Monsignor Kopilovich, pro-rector of the Catechetical Institute in Subotitsa, comments on the implications of this exodus.
The war left a wound on families. Families dwindled. And what's worse, mostly the intellectuals and the young have left. Now the situation is like this. At Christmas and Easter, there are long queues on the border because these young people want to celebrate with their parents. How long will this go on for? For as long as their parents are alive. So really, we are being weeded out. Jesus' words, "Do not fear, little flock. Now comfort us. That great mass of people that we once had, we have no more. The number of parishioners is halved. And that's the situation in most of the parishes of the diocese. Since the majority here are Orthodox, we can calculate, thanks to mixed marriages, the Catholic Church will be at a continual minus.
Bishop Janusz Pędzerz of the Diocese of Subotitsa firmly believes that a better future awaits his flock.
Do not be afraid. Jesus and the Holy Spirit know the way things have to be. God's providence has already worked miracles. Could anyone have imagined, in the 60s, what was going to happen in Yugoslavia? Indeed, not only to Yugoslavia, but also to the Soviet Union? If anyone trustworthy had tried to tell us what would happen after the 91st year of the 20th century, we would have considered him mad. The regime seemed so strong. It seemed to be made of stone, of granite, and that nothing could destroy it. And yet it came down like a house of cards.
The economy is faltering, unemployment is high, monthly wages amongst the lowest in Serbia. This city, in the 1900s a synonym for wealth and prosperity, has been on its knees for the last 20 years. The diocese would not have survived without help. For this reason, all emphasize their enormous gratitude to Aid to the Church in Need, the charity that gave selflessly. For example, during the construction of the seminary, the Augustinianum.
Aid to the Church in Need has been helping us for the last 50 years, and it's still helping us today. Financially, we are very weak at the moment, and the very essentials have to be provided by Aid to the Church in Need.
The past has not been kind to the Catholics of Vojvodina and Serbia, whilst the present brings new challenges. There are less and less people here. Many Catholics, Croats and Hungarians are leaving this land, despite the rich soil, to find bread elsewhere. However, regardless of how much pessimism these facts engender, the Croats remain faithful to God and place their hope in His providence.
I want to stay here. This is where my forefathers' graves are. It wasn't easy for them either, but they knew how to answer the challenges of their times. And they left their descendants behind. They left something valuable behind, which we are proud of. Customs, traditions, faith. I would really, really like our children to remain here. With prayer and with God, I remain here. I hope that there will be work for our children here and that there will be peace. May it not get any worse. I hope and I trust in God that things will get better. My hope is that Christianity will remain here, that it will be a sign, a light, a seed for the future. The Subotitsa diocese has a chance to be like yeast. I believe in that yeast as a man of the Bible, a Christian, a man of hope and faith. God will not abandon us.